There we go. Okay, raise your hand here if you've seen in the last month, just the last month, someone with urgency, frequency, but negative urine cultures. And how many of you diagnosed IC? Raise your hand to that. And how many people responded to these weird installations and other weird treatments for IC? So what I want to say is, being in this field for 1 or 2 years, I've been impressed with how often IC is not IC. And I want to impress upon you objective ways for you to think of bladder urgency and frequency without urinary tract infections, where the bladder is the innocent person. It's not the bladder. It's outside the bladder that's really causing the symptoms. And I would love for you to leave having learned this. So just a little introduction. IC was really described in 1915 by Leroy Hunter, who, in women without positive cultures and urgency and frequency and distressing symptoms and bladder pain and pain with sex, they found a Hunter's ulcer in the dome of the bladder. And if you do cystoscopy, you don't see the Hunter ulcer. It really isn't or shouldn't be considered with interstitial cystitis. We introduce this concept, remote. Okay, you can have a woman in Japan and a man in San Francisco. If you create with your cell phones a vibrator system where the person in San Francisco can activate the vibrator in Japan, you can have some cool sexual, exciting, remote issues. So you don't have to be in the same place as where you are trying to stimulate. So a sensation may be perceived in a location in this particular issue, bladder, urethra, and genitals, but the sensation in that location may be generated by a trigger remote from that location. So if you look at the regions, I'm not exactly sure I can show this to you, apparently not. So there's regions 1, which is the genitals, region 2 is the pelvis perineum, region 3 is the cauda equina, region 4 is the upper spinal cord, and region 5 is the brain. We're going to look now at region 1, but not bladder. So we're looking here at the end organ being the vestibule, really being the vestibule. By the way, you don't have my slides. You have the wrong set of slides up, by the way. So I'll continue. But interstitial cystitis is associated with vulvodynia and sexual dysfunction. This is a paper in the Journal of Sexual Medicine. And if you look at the graph on the left, it'll say control as sort of the darker one. These are women without it, but they compared women with it, and if you look at the symbol, it's vulvodynia, 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 and dyspareunia. And you can see that there's this high association between women with this so-called, I'm going to say magical diagnosis of IC, because it's magical when it's not Hunter ulcer-based. And then in that group they did, oh, God bless you. Thank you so much. The upper right of this slide shows all the different vulvodynias. They're a little tiny to see, but let me suggest that there's more than one basis for vulvodynia. But the lower right there says table 4 talks about the pain in the woman's the female sexual function index, and the control group had much higher, and the active group, the IC group, the so-called IC group had a lot of pain. And the whole point is there's an incredible high prevalence of vulvodynia in IC because the real reason for IC without the Hunter ulcer can really be vulvodynia. That's the observation we've been making. And sitting to my left is Rachel, who I think did one of the cooler studies in this. She took 75 women who had provoked vestibulodynia. They did not have IC. They had provoked vestibulodynia. I'll teach you how you diagnose that. These are the symptoms that they had, but the so-called provoked vestibulodynia patients had dyspareunia, feelings of rawness, pain with tampons, vulvar pain. They also had urgency and frequency. That's the sort of joining, bladder pain, and relief of bladder pain with voiding were the provoked vestibulodynia. So these women with provoked vestibulodynia were treated with for their provoked vestibulodynia condition, and there were responders to their treatment. 50% of patients were diagnosed with hormonally mediated vestibulodynia, 63% were diagnosed with neuroproliferative vestibulodynia, and 44% were diagnosed with high-tone pelvic floor dysfunction. That successful treatments for the provoked vestibulodynia improved the bladder symptoms by 60% in about 80%, and 40% and 90%, and no treatment was directed to the bladder. That's a good sign, okay? The so-called IC patients are being very helpfully managed by directing management to the real source of the problem. Now, in this study, is Jesse Mills here? Raise your hand, Jesse. Jesse has faded on me. One of the participants of this trial, if you look, it's called immunohistochemical staining. You'll see the alley drain, and underneath it says Andrew Goldstein. That's my son who's at UCLA, and he's a molecular biologist, and he's very involved in this study. We took women who had surgery for vestibulodynia called neuroproliferative, and we went up to UCLA and we did the microscopic analysis of how many mast cells and nerves they had, which is the picture on the right. They're 100% infiltrated with nerves and mast cells, and it's really nothing to do directly with IC, but the patients had very IC-like symptoms. Again, another message is that IC can be outside of the bladder. Now, if you do have, you're sitting in the audience, you don't really see women that much, and you have IC, I just beg you, okay, take your Q-tip, spread their labia, touch the Q-tip at the 1 o'clock through the 12 o'clock positions, take some local anesthetic, benzocaine, lidocaine, tetracaine, repeat the process. If there's symptoms going away, including their bladder pain, they really have a vestibulodynia, and that's the true point of what we do in this thing. Okay, now we're going to region 2. We're finished with the region 1 vestibule. Now we're going to the pelvic floor, and we're going to the pudendal nerve. And this is a paper where hypertonic pelvic floor was associated with IC. Hypertonic pelvic floor was seen in 50 to 87% of the IC patients. The second major condition that relates to IC in region 2 is the endometriosis. It's uterine uterine-like pathology. 70% of women with endometriosis had bladder pain. So to think outside of the IC box is region 2, to think of pelvic floor endometriosis. This is a pudendal nerve stimulation. This is the famous Ken Peters in Beaumont, Michigan. And he shows you can cure IC by fooling around with the pudendal nerve, and he has this incredible pudendal nerve stimulator that he puts in. Here's somebody, Dr. Dellin, who basically transected the general femoral nerve and the ilioinguinal nerve and also got rid of IC symptoms. So it's another sort of region 2 region for the IC thing. So when IC is not IC, here's my love, is the codequine. I work with a spine surgeon, and we've done now 180, can you imagine that, 180 surgeries in sexual medicine individuals who have codequine pathology. It's truly the most amazing experience of my career. You know, there's this thing called sciatica, and everybody buys into it. You have back pain, leg shoots, pain shooting down the back of the leg or the side of the leg. Everybody understands sciatica. It was described 1 million years ago. Everybody understands it, and it's lower extremity sciatica. But for whatever reason, we can't get out of that paradigm. Your clitoris can be in a sciatica situation. The vestibule can be in a sciatica situation. The bladder can be in a sciatica situation. They're really nerves that have to get to the brain, right? So if they pass going up to the brain, they get to the codequina, they can be irritated by a disc or a Tarlov cyst, and you could get symptoms, just like the lower extremity. So here are the 3 nerves. They are the pudendal in green. You have the pelvic in blue, and you have the sciatic in black. And they all end up going through the S2, S3 foramina, and they pass up as sacral nerve roots. As they ascend, they can be irritated by a disc or a Tarlov cyst causing problems. They merge like a cable. So there is a sacral nerve root that has pelvic, pudendal, and sciatic in it. And as your disc is impinging on these three nerves, peripherally nerves, centrally nerve roots, you get that thing. So I have 2 more slides left. This is a woman from St. John's, Newfoundland, Canada, who rose on that lake, Lake Quidi-Vidi, for those Canadians here. But the boats are extremely, they weigh a lot, and they hurt her back. And she went to urologists with shards of glass pane in her urethra and shards of glass pane on the anterior vaginal wall. And she ended up in San Diego. We found her cauda equina from her rowing, so she had a disc from the rowing. We did surgery on her, and she has no more shards of glass. The bottom line is IC cannot be IC. It can be vestibulodynia. It can be pudendal nerve problems. It can be pelvic nerve problems. It can be endometriosis problems and be cauda equina problems. Please, please take this message home with you. Thank you.